Let's take a quick break.
Finally,
just like
the guy
5
looked
minutes.
at me and he says, "Are you a movie star?" And I thought, I don't know where this is going. And I said, I don't really know what you mean. I'm not really a movie star. He says, yeah, I think you are a movie star. And he says, I've seen you in a movie. And I said, okay, what was the movie? He said, Desperate Encounters. And I said, Desperate Encounters, what was that? And he said it was something with Kurt Russell and I think Harrison Ford. And I said, I was in that one? And he said, yeah, you were in that one. And I said, was I a good guy or a bad guy? He said, you were a bad guy. He said, you were a really good bad guy, but you were a bad guy. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, I also saw you in Law and Order. Law and Order, the TV series, I've never even seen it, let alone been in it. And so I'm thinking, this guy has a different view of reality, and he's seeing whatever he expects because he did not believe me when I said I was not in those movies or TV shows. He had his own little programming that he had caught, his own data, and coming through him, through his eyes, and his opinion was, I was just a celebrity movie star who didn't want to be recognized. This guy also said, you know, last week I picked up William Shatner. And I said, oh, really? I mean, we all love William Shatner, right? And I said, what was William Shatner like? And he said, oh, he was not a nice man. He said he tried to steal my wine glasses that he had in the back of the limo. And I said, this doesn't sound like William Shatner. And I asked him, I said, how tall was the guy? And he said, like 6'4". And I said, you know, that's not William Shatner. And I said, did he say his name was William Shatner? And the guy said, no, he said his name was Bill Archer. He said, but I know it was really William Shatner. And I thought, boy, we got a doozy of a driver here. And of course, Narissa finally says, have you ever heard of the movie The Secret? And the guy says, no, I never heard of it. And Narissa says, that's the movie he's in. But by then, he thought we were fabricating a completely different story to hide the fact that I was actually in Law and Order and Desperate whatever. You know, this is the man who picked up Bill Archer, who thinks he's William Shatner. Bizarre. But in many ways, we're all doing that. In many ways, we're doing that. We're not doing it intentionally any more than he was doing it intentionally, but there is all of this data that's keeping us from being here. And that was playful data that makes a funny story, but it's still data. So what we're here to do today is to clean as much of that as possible. I have been doing nonstop cleaning to the best of my conscious ability ever since I took my first workshop with him, which is now, I think, 3 years ago. Mark would have to remind me. And for me, it is just saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you, nonstop. It has become my new self-talk. Now, all of you know what self-talk is on some level. You're doing it even right now. That's more of the data that's barking in your ears. And if you listen to your self-talk, it is amazingly critical. And if your best friend talked to you like that, or any family member, you would kill them. But you're talking to yourself. At least the data is talking to yourself in there. And what I've been working on is to replace that negative self-talk with, I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. I don't say it in any particular order, but I do say it, and I am saying it right now. It's the background talk in the back of my head. When I was listening to him speak, it was going on in the back of my head as I'm standing over there, and as I keep doing this cleaning, inspiration is allowed to come through.
Ho'oponopono. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. If you haven't heard of it, brace yourself, because it's the most powerful, the most transformational, the most magical, the most miraculous technique I've ever come across. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. I've written 80 books. I've recorded 15 albums. I have 200 some products. I have a coaching program, certification programs, but nothing ever has had the impact in my life as Ho'oponopono has. I've been teaching it to other people since around 2005. There is great depth to it, though it's very simple. On the very superficial level, there's really only 4 phrases, and you're kind of saying them as a quiet prayer or petition. But there's so much more to it than that. And what I really want you to do is check it out. I want you to check it out for you, your family, your friends, and ultimately for the world. It's that powerful. And as I like to say, expect miracles.